There's a new report out in the New York Times which describes the lengths the Trump administration went to try to play politics with coronavirus. Now, in the interviews with the New York Times, there's a former CDC chief of staff, Kyle McGowan, and his deputy, Amanda Campbell, who detailed how multiple White House officials who had zero expertise in public health, shocker, would regularly order changes to the CDC's pandemic protocols. So now, again, this is while coronavirus has been raging across the country, killing over 300,000 Americans. You had, at least in the lead up to that, people like Ivanka Trump and Kellyanne Conway saying, ooh, no, I don't like that. That makes Trump look bad. So we're going to have to change that. We're going to have to edit that. We're going to have to scrub that, okay? Because that looks bad for Trump. So now those changes, as I mentioned, they would be often motivated by political, by basically political considerations in order to help Donald Trump's re-election chances. In fact, here's part of the article. Mr. McGowan and Ms. Campbell mediated between CDC Director Robert Redfield and agency scientists when the White House requests and dictates would arrive. Edits from Kellyanne Conway, former White House advisor on choirs and communion in faith communities, or suggestions from Ivanka Trump, the president's daughter and aide, on schools, reports the Times. According to McGowan, the CDC routinely watered down its guidance under pressure from the Trump political team. In fact, he told the Times, quote, every time that the science clashed with the messaging won. Oh, I know, shocker, right? That you have an administration that puts messaging over science, that ignores science. Again, this is the same administration that, says, headed by the president, that says windmills cause cancer. You've got the windmills, and they spin around, and they go, and they give you cancer. No, that's not true at all. The same person that would, argued about the path of a hurricane and tried to draw Sharpie and to change its course in order to go against the scientists. So they hate science. They can't stand it. And so they're doing political propaganda, changing the science, especially when it comes to the pandemic, which of course is, it's super unpopular of a position to take in order to fight the pandemic in the way that they were supposed to. And so there's more examples of this, by the way. Mr. McGowan recalled the White House fixated on the economic implications of public health measures. He and Dr. Robert Redfield, the CDC director, had negotiated with Russell T. Vogt, the White House budget director, over social distancing guidelines for restaurants. Mr. Vogt argued that specific spacing recommendations, 6 feet, right, would be too onerous for businesses to enforce. Now, look, I haven't dined in. You wouldn't catch me dining in a restaurant at all at this point, right? There's no way in hell I'm going to dine in a restaurant. And so the spacing requirements, for me, seem like moot. It seems like a really dumb thing to do, to go and eat in at a restaurant, especially since, you take your mask off to eat. And that kind of eliminates the efficacy of a mask. If you're, but anyway, it's so stupid, right? But nonetheless, they're like, okay, let's try to at least open things up halfway, right? With a 50% occupancy, to at least try to reduce coronavirus while still making people who, really, really want to go to the fucking Applebee's and eat, and have somebody come serve them instead of doing car side pickup. We're going to make those people happy. We're going to bend to the Republican conservative mob that thinks that it's their right to go eat at a restaurant, even in the middle of a pandemic. And by the way, those people are often piss poor tippers and try to get the servers to remove their masks in order to figure out how much to tip them. These are gross people, right? But nonetheless, they tried to make some, at least some sort of rules to try to prevent those same people from getting coronavirus and ending up in the hospital, taking up valuable hospital space. All right. And so when they tried to do that, and they tried to enforce the 6-foot rule, or at least to write it in the CDC recommendations, you had these economic people, political appointees saying, nope, businesses, they're not going to want to do that. Too onerous. I don't think it's that onerous. 6 feet, motherfucker. 6 feet. That's not that hard. Nope, still too hard for them. So there's more, right? So Mr. McGowan, in response to this, he said this: it is not the CDC's role to determine the economic viability of a guidance document. I love that response because it's 100% true. Despite that, they ended up compromising anyway and recommending social distancing without actually putting in like a 6-foot measurement. Again, they bow down backwards for these people. As for Ms. Campbell, one of her responsibilities was helping secure approval for the agency's morbidity and mortality weekly report. You would think that there was something like that would be kind of super important, especially like when it comes to accurately tracking the people affected by coronavirus. And it's usually a very non-political resource that is used by the government in order to make policy decisions. Of course, under Trump, that unfortunately became incredibly political. In fact, here's what the Times says. Over the summer, political appointees at the health department repeatedly asked CDC officials to revise, delay, and even scuttle drafts that they thought could be viewed by implication as criticism of President Trump. And we, of course, know that Donald Trump has an incredibly thin skin, so anything that could be viewed as even a tiny little bit of criticism can't have it. It's really gonna make Donald Trump feel bad. It's gonna give him the feels, and he's gonna get very, very upset. We cannot upset the baby, so we must change this. Sad. Sad. Man. And look, there are some ways that it got even more absurd. In fact, in the spring, CDC published an app that allowed Americans to screen themselves for symptoms of coronavirus, right? The Trump administration ended up going with a tool with Apple, developed by Apple. White House officials then demanded that the CDC remove the app off its website because, well, I mean, we already had Apple make one. Why do we need another one made by our own CDC? It's just ridiculous. In the end, of course, the interference from the White House got in the way of actually doing things, that we're supposed to do. In fact, here's what Ms. Campbell said. She's like, look, at the pandemic's outset, I was confident the agency had the best scientists in the world at its disposal, just like we had in the past. So we can handle this. We got this. We got this coronavirus thing. Just get out of the way and let us do our job. Unfortunately, she added, what was so different, though, than last time, for example, during the Obama administration, was the political involvement, not only from HHS, but then the White House, ultimately, that in so many ways hampered what our scientists were able to do. Because, of course, and you know the reason for that, it's because they don't care about the science. What they wanted to do was to open up the country, open up the businesses, get back to normal. Now, you might ask, well, what's wrong with that? We all want to open up. We all want to get back to normal, right? Well, the problem is we're not ready to get back to normal. We have a virus that is still going around that has killed over 300,000 plus Americans. We can't pretend to go back to normal while this is happening, even though there are 2 now vaccines out that have been put into emergency authorization by the FDA. It's still going to take months in order to get them out to as many people as need them, okay? And so if you continue to do what you're doing and opening it up, then people are going to die. Lots and lots of people are going to die. And unfortunately, that was their unofficial position. And so, again, you have emails where there's somebody high up in the administration who said, we want them to be infected. We want to push a herd immunity strategy. And herd immunity without a vaccine, well, that's it. It's gonna lead to a lot of people, even in the millions, dying. But they wanted to do it to protect corporations and, more importantly, get Donald Trump reelected. Now, understand that if we didn't have people in the Democratic Party, as flawed as it is, and trust me, I am a huge critic of the Democrats. I don't even like the Democratic Party most of the time. But they did fight to give people some sort of relief. Was it enough? Obviously not. But they at least fought for something. And then they also, to my surprise, did fight against a corporate liability provision. That was, in many ways, a non-starter. Even the terrible bipartisan compromise bill that is currently being negotiated in the House, in the Senate, right? That corporate liability provision ended up getting stripped out, as well as, unfortunately, aid to the states, which is what Democrats were asking for. And so, at least that provision is stripped out so that people, if they do get sick because or as a result of corporate negligence in protecting their own employees, at least will be able to sue. And so if we didn't have at least the Democratic Party that was fighting against this stuff, we would have more dead, maybe even over 1 million. The parties are not the same. I mean, yes, they serve the corporations. Obviously, they both do. They absolutely service the corporations. But one party happens to draw the line at mass murder. The other one doesn't seem to do so, seems to encourage people going out and spreading a deadly virus to each other. And by the way, that same party routinely meddled, put out misinformation, disinformation to further their own political goals, while blocking every bit of aid that the other side did try to push. And the other side did try to push aid. Again, was it enough? No. But it was absolutely more than what the other side was trying to give. And understand that we live in a broken country. This is what a broken country does. Okay? And that is held hostage to some of the worst kinds of people. Never, ever should we let the Republicans forget what they have done, nor should we let them get away with it. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf, or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.